What if I told you that every time you eat a burger, pour cereal into a bowl, or crack open an egg, there's a very real chance one family made money from it? Not a flashy tech billionaire, not a celebrity CEO you follow on social media, a family you've probably never even heard of. They're called the Cargills, and they run the largest private company in the United States. Let me say that again. The largest private company in America. Bigger than Mars, bigger than Koch Industries, bigger than Deloitte. And unlike those companies, almost nobody talks about them. They don't do interviews. They don't ring the opening bell at the stock exchange. They don't show up at conferences delivering flashy keynote speeches. They are ghosts, billionaire ghosts, and they control more of your food than you could possibly imagine. This is the story of how one family quietly built an invisible empire that touches nearly every plate on Earth. Let's go back to the very beginning. The year is 1865. The American Civil War has just ended. The country is shattered. Cities are burned. Farms are destroyed. Millions of soldiers are coming home to nothing. But in the middle of that chaos, a young man from Wisconsin named William Wallace Cargill sees an opportunity almost nobody else sees. Here's the situation. Farmers across the Midwest are producing enormous amounts of grain, wheat, corn, barley, mountains of it, but they have a massive problem. There's no reliable way to store it. There's no efficient way to ship it, and most farmers have no idea what price they'll get when they finally sell. They're at the mercy of weather, railroads, and middlemen who often rip them off. So William does something simple but brilliant. He scrapes together every dollar he has and buys a single grain storage warehouse in Conover, Iowa, one small wooden building sitting next to the railroad tracks. He tells farmers, "Bring me your grain, I'll store it safely. When the price is right, I'll sell it for you, and I'll take a small cut." Farmers loved the deal. They no longer had to worry about rats eating their harvest or negotiating with shady traders. William handled everything. Think of it like this. Imagine you're running a lemonade stand, but you don't have a refrigerator. Your lemons go bad every night. Then someone shows up and says, "I've got a cooler. Store your lemons with me. I'll sell the lemonade for you. I just want 10 cents from every dollar." That person doesn't grow lemons, doesn't squeeze them, doesn't even drink lemonade, but they make money every single time a glass is sold. That was William Cargill, and that one small wooden warehouse became the first brick in an empire that would eventually help feed the planet. But here's where the story shifts. William wasn't the type of man to sit still. He didn't just enjoy his one warehouse and call it a day. He expanded, fast. A second warehouse, a third, a 10th. Then he started buying the grain elevators that lifted crops into rail cars. Then he bought stakes in the railroads themselves, then river barges, then shipping ports along the Great Lakes. Within just 20 years, William Cargill didn't simply store grain. He controlled the entire journey of food, from the dirt on a farmer's boots to the bread on a family's table. Every step of the chain, he owned a piece, and every time grain moved, he got paid. But the real masterstroke came after William died, when the family faced a decision that would define their future. They had two options: go public, sell shares, raise billions, and become famous like every other American business dynasty. Or stay private, lock the doors, keep the money inside the family, tell the world almost nothing. They chose silence, and that single decision, made more than a century ago, is the reason you've probably never heard of them. Because when you're a private company, you don't answer to shareholders. You don't file detailed public earnings reports. You don't have analysts dissecting your strategy on television. You explain yourself to anyone. You become invisible. And the Cargill family has stayed invisible for more than 159 years. Now fast forward to today, and let's talk about what Cargill actually does, because this is where it gets almost unbelievable. If you think Cargill is just an old grain company moving wheat around in trucks, that's like saying Apple just makes calculators. Cargill has evolved into something massive, something almost impossible to fully grasp. They are one of the largest meat processors on the planet. Beef, poultry, pork. They crush more soybeans than almost anyone. They process cocoa that ends up in the chocolate you eat. They refine the cooking oils you use every day. They produce the animal feed that fattens the chickens and cattle on your plate. They trade cotton on global markets. They ship sugar across oceans. They deal in palm oil, ethanol, salt, starches, and sweeteners. They operate in more than 70 countries with over 160,000 employees. In a single year, Cargill moves enough grain to fill a freight train stretching from New York City to Los Angeles and back twice. When you walk through a grocery store, roughly 1 out of every 4 products on those shelves has been touched by Cargill somewhere along the supply chain. The bread, the cooking oil, the chicken, the chocolate, the eggs, all of it passed through their system before it reached you. And the craziest part? Their name is almost never on the label. But here's the twist that makes this family truly different from almost every other wealthy dynasty on Earth. The Cargills aren't just rich, they are among the wealthiest families in modern history, and almost nobody treats them that way. In recent years, the extended Cargill and Macmillan family, connected through generations of marriage, has produced at least a dozen individual billionaires. Not millionaires, billionaires. Multiple family members have personal fortunes estimated between $3 and $5 billion. Some estimates put the family's combined wealth at well over $100 billion. That would place them alongside, or even above, families like the Waltons of Walmart, or the Mars family behind the global candy empire. And yet, you will almost never see a Cargill on the cover of a magazine posing next to a sports car. They don't build rockets for fun. They don't buy yachts the size of cruise ships. They don't purchase social media platforms to post memes. They buy farmland. They buy processing plants. They buy shipping routes and storage terminals, quietly, patiently, generation after generation. They are not the kind of rich that wants your attention. They are the kind of rich that benefits from your silence. So how did a single grain warehouse in Iowa turn into something this powerful? The answer is a strategy so simple it almost sounds boring, but it's incredibly effective. Cargill understood something early on that most businesses never fully grasp. You don't need to sell the final product. You just need to sit in the middle of every transaction. Cargill is the toll booth on the highway of food. They don't need to own the farm. They don't need to own the grocery store. They just need to control everything in between: the storage, the processing, the shipping, the trading, the financing. Every time food moves from point A to point B anywhere in the world, Cargill takes a cut. And here's why that matters. Tech companies rise and fall. Banks collapse. Crypto crashes. Entire industries get disrupted overnight by someone in a garage. But food? Food is the one thing every human being on this planet needs every single day. You can live without a smartphone. You can cancel every subscription you have, but you cannot stop eating. Cargill built its empire on the one commodity that will never go out of demand: hunger itself. But not everyone sees this story as a success story. In fact, a growing number of critics argue that Cargill's power is deeply concerning. When one company has this much influence over the global food supply, what happens when things go wrong? And things have gone wrong. In recent years, Cargill has been linked to large-scale deforestation in the Amazon rainforest and the Brazilian Cerrado, driven by demand for soy and cattle feed. They've been accused of profiting from child labor in West African cocoa supply chains. Environmental groups have labeled them one of the most significant corporate polluters in the world. And here's the part that makes people especially uneasy. During periods when global food prices surged and ordinary families struggled to afford basic groceries, Cargill reported record-breaking profits, revenues exceeding $150 billion in peak years. Think about that for a moment. As food became more expensive for everyday people, the company sitting in the middle of the system made even more money. Because when prices rise, the middleman doesn't get squeezed. The middleman takes a larger cut. Cargill doesn't just survive food crises. Cargill profits from them. And that leads to the final, and perhaps most unsettling, part of this story. Cargill is remarkably resilient, almost untouchable. They have survived every major economic shock in modern history. World War I disrupted global trade. Cargill adapted and expanded. The Great Depression crushed countless businesses. Cargill kept growing. World War II reshaped the global economy. Cargill found new opportunities. The 2008 financial crisis wiped out banks and destabilized nations. Cargill barely flinched. Even global pandemics that shut down entire countries couldn't stop their supply chains. No recession, no war, no crisis has come close to bringing them down, because their business is built on the one constant of human existence: people need to eat. You can lose your job, you can lose your home, you can cut every expense in your life, but you will still walk into a store and buy food. And when you do, somewhere along that chain, Cargill gets paid. Today, Cargill sits at the invisible center of a global system that feeds more than 8 billion people. They are the silent hand in your kitchen, the invisible partner at every meal, a family that made a bet 159 years ago on the one resource that would never lose value. One wooden grain warehouse in Iowa. One deceptively simple idea: store the food, control the flow of food. And while the world watches tech billionaires compete for attention, the Cargill family remains in the background, generation after generation, growing richer with every bite you take. The next time you sit down for dinner, take a look at your plate. There's a good chance someone you've never heard of helped put that food there, and they made a fortune doing it. You just never knew their name. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. There are more like it.